Welcome to Free Your Mind Reviews. This is Chris Johnson with a review of Gretel and Hansel. So, Gretel and Hansel is, of course, a new wave look at the old fashioned Hansel and Gretel story. You know, most everybody knows it. Two kids in the woods, go to a house, witch lives there, feeds them cake and all types of goodies in order to fatten them up and eat them. They outwit the witch, right? Blah, blah, blah. What makes this one a little different is that instead of Hansel and Gretel being the same age, Gretel is the older sister, basically pretty much twice as old, having to look after her little brother after their father dies and their mother basically loses her gosh dang mind and sends them off into the woods because she can't take care of them. She got to take care of the ghosts. Uh, and then of course from there, they have to fend for themselves while she has to protect her brother. They meet the witch. But another difference between this and the old fashioned story is that instead of just wanting to eat them, the witch kind of wants to groom Gretel to be the new wave of witch. Um, just like the rhythm section, this one for me is kind of a mixed bag for really the exact same reasons. The directing is pretty much on point, just like with that film. The visuals are spectacular. Um, like I've seen some critics kind of say it's like they kind of tried to do The Witch or really Robert Eggers movies and mix them with like maybe some elements and looks from Mandy. And you really see that in the cinematography, and the cinematography is absolutely gorgeous. The use of color is fantastic, in my opinion. The set design is out of this world. And the on-screen talent is really good. Uh, all three of the main actors are really good, and it's always great to see Alice Krieg. She of course was the Borg Queen in Star Trek First Contact, and I've loved her ever since seeing her in that, and she's a fantastic choice for this character for the witch. Sophia Lillis is Gretel, and if you've seen it, both actually chapter 1 and chapter 2, she's younger Beverly, so you know how talented she is. And even the little kid who plays Hansel is good. So, but just like the rhythm section, I feel like the movie and like the director and everything is a little bit let down by the narrative. The narrative and the pace too. It really has the same flaws. And the fact that they both came out the same day, they're both with female leads. It's unfortunate they both ended up having the same flaws. Um, the movie's an hour and 27 minutes. It's only 87 minutes. Feels like 2 hours. Not much happens, and this some be drags. I gotta tell you, it drags. Um, Also, script wise, I feel like there was not enough meat to what they were trying to do. In terms of they were trying in making Gretel older, they were trying to kind of make her feeling come off as a more of an empowered female. Even though if you really look at it, Gretel always was that anyway. Like who pushes the witch into the oven, right? And in their attempts to empower her, it became a weird blend and mix of this old fashioned 1700 1800 style, but the way Gretel talks is like someone from the year 2020. There was things that were expected of women, unfortunately, back in those days that 2020 people wouldn't accept, of course, right? And shouldn't accept. But it comes off a little weird because this character is not from 2020. This character's from back then. Um, Also, they don't really do a. The actress is great, but they do a really mixed job in her and giving a crap about her. Again, just like the lead character in the rhythm section, where the actress is great, but the writing doesn't really give her enough meat. She kind of comes off kind of whiny a little bit because it's like it was they were playing with the idea that Hansel is a burden to her because she has to keep looking out for him. And I'm like, well, of course you have to keep looking out for him. That's your little brother. You're a sibling. I'm a sibling, for example. I'm a sibling. Now, I'm technically the younger brother, but really, in terms of physicality and the fact that I'm not special needs and my brother is, I have to pick up the older brother duties. So, when you had a moment where Hansel was like a little bit in danger and she hesitated, it kind of makes her look like a selfish piece of crap to me. And, probably some people would be a little more understanding of her in those moments. But for me, it's like, that you're a sibling. Oh, you're not his mother. Yeah, you're not his mother. You're his older sister. So you do have responsibility to him, especially considering he's 8 years old. And if it was flipped, and he would be 16 and she would have been 8, I would have been saying the exact same thing because that's how I feel about sibling relationships. That's not a burden. That is not a burden. That is what you're supposed to do if you really love family. If blood really means something to you, that is not a burden. And then, I actually personally felt the most interesting aspect of the film was the witch. This little scenes where maybe the witch seems like she's trying to groom Gretel, but then it happens so late in the movie, and the script doesn't really do a good enough job, in my opinion, of planting the seeds of Gretel being possibly seduced by what this witch has to offer. It was like one scene, she's completely like, we got to get out of here. All right, it's time to move on. Hansel, let's leave. And then little tiny 1 minute scene happens. And the next thing you know, Hansel and Gretel's feelings are flipped. And now Hansel wants to leave, and Gretel's like, no, we should stay. What else are we going to do? It felt like there were scenes cut out that would have further fleshed that out. I don't know, and without spoiling, I don't know if the third act worked for me either. And it was kind of crazy because there was a lot of people walking out at that moment. And I don't think it's that type of movie in terms of quality, poor quality. I definitely don't. I think the visuals are too good. I think the acting's too good. But there is definitely narrative problems there, and part of me can understand why they walk out at the moment that they do. Yeah, that was interesting. Um, Also, now do not get me wrong. I don't think the score is bad. The musical score, I don't think it's bad. I just think it was in the wrong movie. There were moments where I didn't think the visuals fit the score. It was almost like they were trying to do a Mandy type score. But Mandy's really a more psychedelic nut house movie. This at times feels like it almost wants to be like The Cell, but for Gretel and Hansel. But it didn't. I just don't think the movie earned that score. I really don't think it did. And you kind of see people kind of call this movie an A24 movie without the smarts. And that's the truth. Because it doesn't have the interesting character of the lighthouse or the witch. Or the really intelligent, psychedelic, creepy factor of either one of those movies. It wants so hard to be those movies, but it's not. I didn't find this movie creepy at all. Which is crazy considering the visuals should be creepy. There is some really good imagery here that should really work. But at the same time, I'm not creeped out because they don't really do anything with them. They really don't. And it's just another example of how No matter how good the director is, no matter how good the actors are, everybody in front of the camera is on point, and everybody involved on the set is on point. It doesn't matter if the material is not on point. It doesn't matter. Writing is still so important to film. It will forever be the most important aspect. I much prefer directing, personally when I'm working, prefer directing over my writing, but I know I have to get this point right before I even step onto a set to shoot my film. If you really, really think about it, this movie does almost everything right. Except for the very thing it needed to get right the most. And that has really been a theme with this January. This January, we had a lot of films. A lot of films. And really, only three of them worked. Really. For the mainstream ones. But the other ones, especially the horror ones, did not put enough care, in my opinion, into the material. This is definitely better than The Grudge and The Turning. Doesn't piss you off like The Grudge and The Turning. But it does still leave you feeling hollow. Because the material is not there. But luckily, unlike those two films, the director was a little more interested in trying to do something special with it, and try to be as creative as he could with it. Which is why, just like with the rhythm section, even though the movie didn't overall maybe wasn't for me, I would definitely look at that director's future work. Because the potential to make a great film is definitely there. And you can tell that the desire is there too. Because those other movies were lazy. They were poor scripts and they were lazy. And in this one, the scripts didn't work, but you could tell the director directed his ass off, and the actors acted their butts off, and the time could come. The time probably will come, just like with the rhythm section, where that specific director will be able to shine through. But yeah, and I'll just say it's weird that this film's whole purpose and inspiration was to try to empower the Gretel character, show how strong of a woman she is, or strong of a female character she is. And honestly, by the end of it, you really have to take into account this is probably the weakest Gretel in soul and in heart. She's probably the weakest Gretel. I mean, this is gonna sound funny because I know a lot of people didn't go see this movie. They assumed it was gonna be horrible, and some people do think it's horrible. But Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunters, that crazy action movie version of this story with the older Hansel and Gretel with Jeremy Renner and Gemma Arterton. So that Gretel is such a better example of a strong, independent Gretel. Hansel is nothing without Gretel in that version of the story, in every version of the story, right? And she is just the backbone of that duo. And she will not be manipulated, she will not be denied, and she will not be overwhelmed in that story, in that version, by anything from witches to douchebag dudes in charge of villages who have no idea what they're doing. So this movie, to try to prop itself up as the female empowerment version of Hansel and Gretel taking the forefront, and in the end, they didn't even accomplish their goal nearly as well as that crazy, fun, cheesy action flick. So, the irony of that, huh? The irony of that.